My wife had me adopt her son from a previous relationship, then divorced me and demanded child support for a kid who wasn't biologically mine. She said, "You signed the papers, deal with it." 2 years later, the courts finally exposed her lies about the father being unknown. Hey viewers, real quick, only 8% of you watching are subscribed and the channel's kind of stuck right now. If you enjoy these stories, hitting that subscribe button would really help us keep going. Thanks. 2 years into a legal nightmare that's finally ending. But I need to start from the beginning so you understand how deep this goes. My name's Matt and I'm 36. 4 years ago, I married Angela, who was 31 at the time and had a 4-year-old son named Tyler from a previous relationship. She told me Tyler's biological father was some guy she dated briefly, who disappeared when she got pregnant, said she had no way to contact him, and his name wasn't even on the birth certificate. Being the stand-up guy I thought I was, I offered to adopt Tyler after we got married. Kid needed a father figure, and I genuinely cared about him. Angela was over the moon about it, kept saying how lucky Tyler was to have a real dad who chose to love him. The adoption process took over a year. Lots of paperwork, background checks, home visits from social workers. The court required us to publish legal notices in newspapers for 6 weeks, trying to locate any unknown biological father. When nobody came forward, and since Angela swore under oath that the father's identity was unknown, the court allowed the adoption to proceed. I became Tyler's legal father in every way that mattered. Changed his last name to mine, added him to my insurance, started a college fund, the whole thing. For 18 months, everything was good. Tyler called me dad, I took him to Little League games, helped with homework. I loved that kid like he was my own blood. Then, Angela started getting weird. Staying out late, being secretive with her phone, picking fights over nothing. Classic signs, but I was too trusting to see it clearly. 2 years ago, she hits me with divorce papers. Says we've grown apart, wants different things, the usual script. But here's where it gets interesting. 4 weeks after serving me with divorce papers, Angela files for child support. Not just any child support, she's demanding I pay for Tyler even though she's the one who left and is trying to limit my visitation. "You adopted him," she says, when I ask why I should pay support for a kid I won't even get to see regularly. "You're his legal father now. That doesn't change because we're getting divorced." Legally, she was right. When I adopted Tyler, I took on all the responsibilities of being his father, including financial support if we divorced. I'd walked right into it, but something about her attitude bothered me. She seemed way too confident about the whole thing, like she'd planned this out. When I mentioned fighting for joint custody, she laughed. "Good luck with that. Tyler's not even your real son and you know it." That comment stuck with me. Not your real son. Why would she phrase it that way if the biological father was truly unknown? The investigation begins. My divorce lawyer David suggested I hire a private investigator to look into Angela's background for the custody case. Maybe find character witnesses or evidence of her fitness as a parent. The PI, a former cop named Steve Martinez, started digging into Angela's past relationships and financial records. What he found was interesting, but not immediately useful. "Your ex-wife has been receiving irregular cash deposits and money transfers for years," Steve told me after 2 months of investigation. Some from guys named Rick Morrison and James Chen. Others from sources I haven't identified yet. What kind of amounts? Rick Morrison has been sending her $300 to $500 every few months for the past 4 years. James Chen sends smaller amounts, maybe $100 here and there. Any idea who these guys are? I'm working on it. Rick Morrison lives about 40 minutes from here. James Chen moved to Oregon 2 years ago. This was before the days when Venmo and other payment apps kept detailed public records. Steve had to piece together financial information from bank records and social media forensics. "Here's the thing that's weird," Steve continued. "The payments from Rick Morrison started right around the time Tyler was born, and they've continued even after she married you." What are you thinking? I'm thinking Rick Morrison might be Tyler's biological father. But Angela said the father was unknown. Angela said a lot of things under oath. Doesn't mean they were true. Steve kept digging. Took him another 6 months to track down Rick Morrison and confirm his identity. Turns out Rick was an electrician who dated Angela for about 8 months 5 years earlier. "I need to approach this carefully," Steve warned me. "If Rick is Tyler's father and Angela lied about it in court, we're talking about potential perjury charges. But we need solid proof before we make any accusations." The breakthrough. The breakthrough came 18 months into my investigation. Steve managed to locate Rick Morrison and, after some convincing, got him to agree to a meeting. Rick turned out to be a pretty normal guy. Works as an electrician, owns his house, seemed genuinely concerned when Steve explained the situation. Angela told me she was marrying some guy, but I had no idea he was adopting Tyler, Rick told us. I've been sending her money to help with Tyler since he was born. Did you know about the adoption proceedings? No. If I'd known, I would have objected. Tyler's my son. Are you sure about that? I mean, I think so. Angela and I were together when she got pregnant. Timeline works out, but she always refused to do a paternity test. Steve and I exchanged glances. Why did she refuse? Said it was expensive and unnecessary since she knew I was the father, but then she also said she didn't want me to have any legal claim to Tyler. What do you mean? She wanted child support but didn't want me to have custody rights. Said if we did a paternity test and I was legally recognized as the father, I might try to take Tyler away from her. This was making sense now. Angela had been collecting informal support from Rick while blocking him from having any legal parental rights. Then she convinced me to adopt Tyler, giving her another source of support and eliminating any chance of Rick establishing paternity. Rick, would you be willing to take a paternity test now? Absolutely. I've wanted to know for sure for years. And if Tyler is your son, would you want to pursue custody rights? I'd want to be part of his life, yeah. I've missed 4 years already. Legal strategy. Getting a paternity test wasn't simple. Tyler was legally my son now, so Rick had no standing to demand testing, and Angela sure wasn't going to agree to it voluntarily. David, my lawyer, researched the options. We could petition the court to allow paternity testing based on fraud in the adoption proceedings, but we'd need to prove Angela lied about the father being unknown. How do we prove that? We need evidence that she knew Rick was the father and concealed that information from the adoption court. Steve went back to work, this time focusing on communications between Angela and Rick around the time of the adoption. This was the hard part, getting access to old phone records, emails, and text messages without violating privacy laws. It took another 8 months, but Steve finally found what we needed. Through a combination of social media forensics and interviews with mutual friends, he discovered that Angela had been in regular contact with Rick throughout our marriage. She's been lying to both of you, Steve reported. Rick has been sending her money for Tyler, and she's been giving him updates about Tyler's activities and school progress. So she maintained a relationship with him? More than that, I found witnesses who saw them together multiple times over the past 3 years, always when you were at work or out of town. What kind of meetings? Looks like Rick was seeing Tyler occasionally, unofficial visits that Angela arranged but never told you about. This was the smoking gun we needed. Angela hadn't just failed to identify Tyler's father, she'd actively maintained a relationship with him while lying to the adoption court about his whereabouts. 2 years after my divorce started, David finally had enough evidence to petition the court for paternity testing and potential reversal of the adoption. The motion alleges fraud in the adoption proceedings based on Angela's failure to disclose the identity and involvement of Tyler's biological father. David explained. What are our chances? Hard to say. Courts don't like reversing adoptions, even when there's evidence of fraud. The standard is always what's in the best interest of the child. What's Tyler's position in all this? The court will appoint a guardian ad litem to represent Tyler's interests independently. They'll evaluate what arrangement is best for him. And if we prove Angela lied, then we petition to void the adoption and terminate your support obligations. Rick would be free to pursue his parental rights. What about Angela? If she committed perjury in the adoption proceedings, that's a separate criminal matter. But our focus is on the civil case first. The court battle. The hearing process took 6 months. Angela fought every step, hiring an expensive family law attorney and arguing that even if Rick was Tyler's father, the adoption was still valid because it was in Tyler's best interests. Rick joined the case as an intervening party, requesting paternity testing and, if confirmed, seeking to establish his parental rights. Tyler's guardian ad litem interviewed everyone involved and spent time with Tyler to understand his feelings about the situation. Tyler was confused by the whole thing, but seemed to handle it okay. The paternity test results came back conclusive. Rick was Tyler's biological father, with 99.7% certainty. Angela's lawyer tried to argue that Rick had abandoned his parental rights by not pursuing formal custody earlier. Rick's new attorney countered that Angela had actively concealed Tyler's existence and prevented Rick from asserting his rights. Your Honor, Rick's lawyer argued, My client has been financially supporting this child for years, while being denied any legal recognition as the father. Ms. Rodriguez deliberately concealed his paternity to manipulate the adoption system. The judge took 3 weeks to review all the evidence before issuing his ruling. The court finds that the adoption was procured through material misrepresentation. Ms. Rodriguez knew the identity of Tyler's biological father and concealed that information from the court. However, the court must also consider Tyler's best interests after 3 years of believing Mr. Patterson was his legal father. The court hereby orders DNA testing to confirm paternity, and if confirmed, will consider Mr. Morrison's petition for parental rights. The adoption will remain in effect pending further proceedings to determine the most appropriate custody arrangement. It wasn't the complete victory we'd hoped for, but it was progress. The final resolution took another year of court proceedings. Rick was confirmed as Tyler's biological father and granted visitation rights that gradually increased to shared custody. My adoption wasn't technically reversed, but my child support obligations were reduced since Rick was now contributing as well. The court essentially created a shared financial responsibility between Rick and me. Angela lost her exclusive control over Tyler and had to deal with Rick having legitimate custody rights. She also faced scrutiny from Child Protective Services for her deception in the adoption proceedings. No criminal charges were filed against Angela despite the perjury evidence. The DA's office said it wasn't worth prosecuting since it was a family court matter, and Tyler's welfare was being addressed through the custody arrangement. 2 years later. It's been about 4 years since Angela first demanded child support and 2 years since the court proceedings ended. Tyler spends time with both Rick and me. It's not a perfect situation, but the kid seems to have adapted well. He's got 2 father figures who both care about him, which is better than a lot of kids get. Angela lost her guaranteed income from me and has to coordinate with Rick on all major decisions about Tyler. She also had to pay both Rick's and my legal fees, which totaled over $40,000. The best part is Tyler gets to have a relationship with his biological father, who genuinely wanted to be involved in his life. Rick didn't abandon his son. Angela just made it impossible for him to be a father until we forced the issue through the courts. I learned a valuable lesson about being too trusting when someone's financial interests are involved. Angela saw me as a solution to her problem of having a child with a father she couldn't control. She got me to take on legal responsibility while keeping the real father at bay without any legal recognition. The process took 4 years and cost me $30,000 in legal fees, but it was worth it to expose the truth. Angela's scheme eventually collapsed under scrutiny, and both Rick and Tyler got what they deserved, a real father-son relationship. Sometimes justice takes time, but it usually finds a way.